forces a turnover in the offensive zone. He'll carry it down low. They score! Chase DeLeo ties it. He'll break it in on a shorthanded chance. DeLeo shoots. Scores! Chase DeLeo! Chase DeLeo, a Gulls top performer.
Welcome to the I3 Roller Hockey Star Spotlight. I'm joined by Chase DeLeo, California native, current San Diego Gulls forward. Chase played for the LA Selects here in California before moving up to Portland to play for the Winterhawks, where he was drafted in the 4th round, 99th overall by the Winnipeg Jets, and eventually in 2018 traded to the Ducks organization, where he's been ever since. Chase, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I went through a little bit of your hockey career there, but if you want to just talk briefly kind of how you first got involved with the sport. I know growing in Southern California, it was a smaller sport than some of the other options out there. So how did you first get involved with hockey?
Yeah, I started out playing roller hockey. I think like a lot of other Southern California guys, we don't have the backyard frozen ponds that we can skate on like some of the Canadian teammates that I have. So started out playing roller hockey. A neighbor at the time actually was good friends with Bob Hartley, who was the coach of the Colorado Avalanche. They invited me to an LA Kings game when the Avalanche were in town. I got to meet and see Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg, Patrick Waugh, all those players that I always watched and looked up to. And pretty much ever since then, that just flipped the switch, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. So slowly started into ice hockey from roller hockey while still playing roller. And then next thing I know, I just decided that's just the only thing that I wanted to do.
Oh, that's awesome. And especially in the smaller hockey community in Southern California. So what are the biggest differences you see? Like, what was the community like then in Southern California, and what are the biggest differences between that and how it is now?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing, it was before, I'm not sure how it is now, but we had to travel almost every single weekend. I remember my parents had to sign me out of school. I had to get all my schoolwork ahead of time so I can still get all my testing and everything done. And I remember we'd leave on Thursday. We'd go to Texas. We'd be in Port Huron, Michigan. We'd be in Colorado. We'd be in Ottawa, Canada. We'd be in Toronto. So pretty much every weekend we'd be out of town going somewhere because we didn't have the benefit of playing in the tournaments locally as much. We'd play the few at like Disney Ice, which is now Anaheim Ice, and stuff like that. But not. I think now there's more academies and there's more local teams with really good organizations and coaches here for the youth hockey programs, where makes it a little bit easier, I hope, and compared to all the traveling and the money that our parents had to sacrifice and do for us when we were younger.
Yeah, definitely. And then, so with all that travel, like constantly going to Canada or off to the Midwest, different places, what did you feel was there perception of California hockey players back then, like when you were playing, or teams when you're playing against those teams?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, they used to just look at us like California surfers, especially, like I said, we'd go to Ottawa and play against all the Canadian kids and the Canadian teams that were always stacked with like the future prospects that were even talked about then at our age. And as a team coming in from California, we were probably a little bit more tan than everybody else, and just kind of got looked down on, and maybe other teams took us easy just because they expected us just to be on the beach the whole time, and just the whole California look, I guess, where for me personally, I know some of the other guys that played with me kind of had a chip on our shoulder and wanted to prove everybody wrong and rock some guys when we played against them, just because we didn't really like the way that they were talking about us and whatnot. Obviously, being from California, where it should be the opposite, because I think being from here, we had to work even harder to get to that point and sacrifice a lot of time in the rinks. And I don't think it's as easy to get ice in California as it is in parts of Canada. So that just goes to show too, where no matter where you're from, it doesn't really matter as long as you put the work in.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think kind of the way you were perceived there, like you said, like some guys having a chip on their shoulder, do you think that affected your style of play, like how you played the game or how it molded you as a player?
Yeah, I think so. I think that kind of goes back to the people think the California guys are like mostly skilled roller hockey, roller daddies they call them, and for me, I think that you learn pretty young when we're able to go to those tournaments and playing against the Canadian kids where they definitely put the work in over there, and they weren't afraid to throw the body and rock us. So I think that taught us from a young age that we were going to have to be tough and fight back and push back and not just get taken advantage of. So we learned quick and from a young age that it wasn't just all stick handling and toe drag and stuff. It's going to be a lot of work, and you're going to have to compete every single game.
Awesome. Yeah, it's cool being exposed to that when you're young and seeing kind of the bigger picture, I guess, of hockey throughout the country or North America. And then do you think that followed into the WHL? Obviously, being the California kid playing in the mostly Canadian and American, obviously in Portland, but in that league, do you think that followed you a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. It was tough. I think it helped me personally going into it because there was a guy named Colin Redden, who's actually the strength and conditioning coach for the San Diego Gulls now. And his wife, Jillian, owns the San Diego Gulls. Her parents own the Ducks. So he actually went to the Portland Winterhawks. He's older than me, and he was there before me, also from California. So that made it a little bit easier on me. And obviously being able to talk to him and kind of hear the ins and outs, he helped me throughout that decision and throughout my time. But definitely, I think it goes back to just the Canadian kids. I think even still now when I play against Canadian guys, they kind of give it to me just being from California. It's just that whole thing. But I think that, like I said before, no matter where you're from, as long as you put the work in and you put your head down and you prove people wrong and you just got to compete, I think it says a lot. And now I think California hockey has grown a little bit more where I think teachers are probably a little bit more familiar if kids are having to get signed out of school earlier, go on trips or go on tournaments. They're a little bit more understanding now, or at first, I don't know really if they believed me or my parents that I was going to Canada for a hockey tournament. So now it's probably a little bit easier on the guys for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned that kind of following you even now when you play against the Canadian guys. But do you think that perception of the California teams at the youth level specifically has changed over the years? Like, do you think teams take teams from California a little more seriously?
Yeah, I think so. I think if they don't, they should. Just because all of the talent that they've produced so far and continue to produce with all the coaches that they have, whether it's former pro hockey players that reside in California and want to teach the youth and take it to the next level. So I think the Anaheim Ducks do a great job with that, with all the programs that they have, the youth hockey, and it helps. I think as a kid, I remember being at Granada Middle School here. The Kings had a couple players that came to our school one day and just did like a little assembly meeting where I took that to heart and I paid attention and I loved it. And I think just little things that you can do in the community to help out and show that hockey is a sport and you can make a career and a living out of it definitely helps.
Oh, yeah, that's great to hear, especially for, some of the players trying to follow in your footsteps for sure. Awesome. So from there, after your fourth season in the WHL, you signed with Winnipeg, and then were eventually in 2018 traded to the Ducks. So you're wrapping up your fifth professional season this past season and second with the Ducks organization when the current situation with COVID-19 kind of hit and both the NHL and AHL seasons were postponed. So I'm sure it's been tough, especially those first few weeks, not really knowing what's going to happen.
Right.
So what have you been doing and what did you do then to kind of stay sharp and stay in shape?
Yeah, it's tough. And I think it escalated pretty quickly, honestly. We were in Tucson for our last game. Well, we didn't know it was going to be our last game, but we heard murmurs about the few guys in the NBA getting sick. And then I feel like next thing you know, it hit the fan kind of. All the leagues followed and the team just told us that they were going to kind of keep us updated and keep us in the loop of what the plan was, that everything was kind of up in the air. And so they kind of told us that we should go to our summer residences, be with our families, be somewhere safe, and make sure that we're healthy. Obviously, during this time, it's important. So I came back to my parents' house in La Mirada, California. Luckily enough for me, it was only like an hour 45 drive. So I just loaded up my apartment into my car and hit the I-5 and came north. So I have a lucky situation here and a good situation where I have a little roller rink in my backyard that I can still put my blades on and shoot some pucks. And I have a little gym set up here in the garage as well that I can still maintain my conditioning and stay in shape. And for me personally, my goal is to still make the Ducks and be a full-time NHL guy. So now is the time where maybe some other guys are relaxing and resting and spending time with their families. This is the time for me where I'm going to try to make some strides and put some extra work in and use this time for my advantage to get stronger and get faster. And you can always keep growing.
Oh yeah, that's great to hear. And then really cool about, obviously lucky having a roller rink or a little roller rink in your backyard we could strap on the blades. So what's it been like? I mean, you played roller growing up. So what's it like seeing all the NHL and AHL guys throughout the league strapping on the inline skates to stay in shape? How's that been?
Yeah, it's awesome. I think it's just a shout out to the guys in Canada that used to give it to us for being roller hockey daddies and roller players, where now they'll get to see how fun it really is. I think that's what makes a sport fun, is you got to enjoy it. You got to love being outside. And for me personally, I'll put my blades on and go down to Huntington Beach and Bolsa Chica and blade down the boardwalk. There's honestly not much better than that, being right in the ocean, 75-degree weather, rollerblading down the beach is pretty cool. So I think it just goes to show, no matter where you're at, if you have a pair of rollerblades or ice skates and a stick and some gloves and a puck, you can have fun no matter where you're at in the world. So it's definitely cool seeing professional athletes. Even I've seen some NFL guys, I think, put on some rollerblades too. Yeah. So it's pretty cool to see all the guys kind of come together and find a way to stay in shape with making the best of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of like a hockey is hockey thing, right?
Yeah,
like if you can play somewhere, you're going to play. That's really cool. So speaking of roller, you obviously have some roller experience where you started playing and then winning a NARTS championship as a kid as well. And then moving into a couple years ago, you actually played in the pro division at the North American Roller Hockey Championships West Coast Finals, which was in Irvine. What was that like kind of after a lengthy pause going back into roller and at that level, jumping into kind of the highest level of roller? How was that?
Yeah, like you said, I won NARCH with the OC Blades when I was Adam, so I don't even know how old I would have been, maybe 6 or 7 years old. So I remember being at the Coast to Coast rink in Huntington, that back little rink, getting put through the ringer, doing all those drills I used to hate doing, stopping and turning and putting in all the hard work there. And yeah, like you said, I took a big break, obviously, when I decided that I wanted to pursue this as my dream, is to be in the NHL. Ice hockey took up a lot of my time. So yeah, like you said, 2 years ago, my buddy Jake Virtanen for the Vancouver Canucks reached out to me and asked if I wanted to be on his NARCH team with him and his brother. He told me it was in Irvine, so I thought that was perfect. It is also a rink that I grew up skating at, and it's local here. So I jumped on it right away. I went over to Hockey Giant, bought a pair of skates. Wasn't as easy as I thought I was going to be coming back into it. I kind of forgot how to stop. My old coach, Joe Cook, was actually watching that first game in NARCH. He hasn't seen me since I was 6 years old, but he definitely didn't recognize me out there. He couldn't believe that I forgot how to stop. I think I was using the boards for the first game. So it was fun. It almost felt like we were little again, playing shinny hockey with a couple of your buddies, but the guys that play roller year round definitely gave it to us, and we're not taking it easy on us whatsoever. So after the first couple of games, I think you got the hang of it. I put the roller turn away and kind of remembered how to stop again. And it was hot out though. It was no joke. It was in the summer, and I remember you forget how hot it is when you are playing roller, how much you sweat. So it was a good workout, but like you said, it was a lot of fun, and it's something that I do now pretty much every day, obviously, given the situation. So I was actually looking forward to hopefully playing NARCH again this summer. It's such a good time and something that those guys and I look forward to doing.
Oh, yeah, it's cool to hear. So especially you said, the roller guys who play roller full time didn't take it easy on you guys. So how do you feel about the level of competition, at that division?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a different game. I think the guys, you can tell definitely which teams are together for a while and actually practice together and have plays written up rather than just the NHL guys trying just to go out there and score as fast as possible. So it's almost like a game of chess, I think, that I learned, where I think when we were younger, it was more run and gun, where now it's a little bit more system. where some teams you might not even touch the puck the entire game, and so that's pretty frustrating. Brendan Lemieux of the New York Rangers was on our team, and he didn't understand the whole bringing the puck back into your own zone and setting everything up. So it can get a little irritating, but those guys that are together playing roller year in and year out definitely show. And it was cool to see just the growth since I've played last of roller hockey, how good everybody is. And it was cool to be a part of it, especially being in Southern California.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Especially, kind of going back to your roots for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So just a last piece of advice, or a last question. You obviously had the path up through Southern California, and ultimately, you've played some NHL games, you've played some AHL games. What's your best piece of advice for those youth hockey players who are looking to even just take their game to, the next level, take that next step as a player?
Right. That's a great question. I think it's all about putting the time in and putting the work in. I think no matter where you are, the situation, whether you have a pair of rollerblades or a roller rink or ice skates or an ice rink, and there's always time where you could put in and put that extra work in, whether it's just doing extra push-ups or extra sit-ups. It's just a mindset, I think, of not being denied and not having the perception of being from California. And I was told from a young age that there was only 1% of players that make it to the NHL. And my parents laugh now, and they said that I always said that I was going to be that 1% to make it. So I think that's a good example, and just goes to show that even if the odds are stacked up against you, just having that will of not being denied and never giving up and always working hard. I think there's a lot of things that are out of your control, but you can always control your work ethic. So that's a big thing I even carry with myself to this day. It's some other guys might be bigger or faster or more skilled, but nobody's going to be working harder than me. So I think that's the best thing that I can say and give to all the youth here in California.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me again. I think that was great advice, and it was great to hear a little bit more about, what you're up to these days, and as well as talk a little bit about the roller hockey game. So thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'm sure kids who are watching this are gonna like it a lot.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Anytime you need me, never hesitate to reach out.
All right. Thanks, Chase.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.